Another game and another terrible performance by the Denver Broncos, especially offensively. Hello, everyone. Welcome inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Glad to have you with us. Although, if I'm being honest, I wish it were under better circumstances. The Broncos falling to the Chargers 19-16 in overtime on Monday Night Football. The entire nation treated to another fantastic performance by the Broncos. Let's jump right into this one. B. Marsh, what is on your mind today? What's on Marshall's mind? Brought to you by Breckenridge Distillery, the official bourbon of the Denver Broncos. Shop Colorado retailers for their limited edition Broncos Bourbon Blends.
Hey, you know what, Mike? I think it might be, Hackett, this whole experiment. It could be one and done. I think it could be one and done. And especially when you pay your quarterback $250 million, right? He's not the first one to go. I guarantee you Russell Wilson will have a lot more rope than Nathaniel Hackett does. So if Hackett doesn't get this offense turned around, because first of all, to average around 15 points a game is nuts. Okay, it's nuts, especially when your quarterback is Russell Wilson. You have weapons like you do. I think it's absurd. Now, either he needs to give up the play calling, hand it over to somebody else, or something needs to happen because, this whole offensive experiment, it looks terrible and it's trash.
Brandon, I'm with you. I think it's time for Nathaniel Hackett to give up the play calling duties offensively. And here's the thing. If you're a head coach and things are not going well right now, you know that your job is on the line. Your first move would be to fire your offensive coordinator or at least change duties. Well, Nathaniel Hackett is the offensive coordinator. He's also the head coach. Whatever he is doing offensively is not working. Earlier in the year, it was the play calls and not getting them in time and getting out of the huddle and some of the timing issues. He's gotten that corrected in large part because he went out and hired Jerry Rossberg to kind of handle some of that stuff for him. But at this point, I think that you are spot on and that the Broncos need a change at the offensive play caller. Because, Brandon, this was awful on Monday night. And we keep hearing how, well, it's going to get better. We're close. No, you're not. The Broncos right now are averaging 15.2 points per game. That is last in the league. The Bears, the Steelers, the Commanders, the Colts, the Panthers, the Texans, for crying out loud. They are all scoring more points than the Denver Broncos right now. This is not acceptable football, what we're seeing on the offensive side of things.
And honestly, I think it might be too much for Hackett right now. It's too much for him to try to manage the game and then call a good game. They're not using Russell. I don't feel like they're using him to his best abilities. He's best when he's on the move. Russ is best when he's on the move. I said it before. Play action boots. Move the pocket a little bit. Russ. First of all, they're in shotgun all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They're in shotgun all the time. They're doing these shotgun runs, and I understand. From a defensive perspective, but at the same time, there's no creativity. It looks like nobody's ever open. Nobody's open, and if they are open, now some of it's on Russ because he will miss a throw, a time or two. But my thing is, Hackett, they have an in-place offensive coordinator, whoever that is, whether it's just a name or a face, just to be out there. He needs to try to call the plays. Hackett needs to put his ego to the side. Think about your family, okay? Think about your family. All right, you don't want to get fired and pick up and have them move again, right? So think of your family, put your ego to the side, let somebody else call the plays because right now it's a mess.
And Brandon, you're right. When it comes to one of these things is going to have to give is kind of what it seems like the direction that we're going in, right? It's not going to be Russell Wilson. Keep in mind, not only did they trade a whole bunch of assets for this guy, but then they went and signed him to a 5-year deal. So after this season, you have 6 more years of Russell Wilson. You are tied to this guy financially for 6 more years. There's no way that they're changing quarterbacks. But is it time to give Brett Rippon at least a look here, or is this all solely on Nathaniel Hackett and the play calling and not putting Russell Wilson in the best position to win football games?
Absolutely not. From a business standpoint, that would be a horrible decision. Well, from a financial standpoint, it'll be a horrible decision. Now, when we talk about business, I think there's 2 aspects of it. There's financial, and then there's I guess reality. Reality is like, well, Russell Wilson, he looked great in the first half, and then But the second half, how many yards did he have in the second half? Was it, in my trip, was it like 15?
No, you're not tripping. It was 15 yards. He was 3 for 9 in the second half, and that was after he was 12 of 17 in the first half for 173 yards.
He's lucky that they paid him. Oh, he's lucky. He's lucky he got that security blanket. He's lucky he got a safety net. The safety net's the contract, because anybody else would be like, all right, now, is it time to make a change?
Yeah.
But truth be told, I honestly think it's Hackett, man. He has to change. The offensive coordinator, the play calling, something has to give. It even looked like they was frustrated on the sideline. You saw Jerry Jeudy talking about Melvin Gordon. We know what Melvin Gordon was upset about. Jerry Jeudy, I can only speculate, what he was upset about or what he was talking about. But, we don't want this to start being a real issue and they stop believing in their quarterback.
Yeah, it's one thing for the defense to be frustrated with the offense. I think what you are seeing right now is the offense is frustrated with the offense, and everyone is putting that on Russell Wilson. There was a great stat yesterday on Twitter from Mike Sando, who covers the NFL. Broncos offensive points per game by a starting quarterback since 2000 with a minimum of 3 starts. There were 17 guys on the list, and Russell Wilson was at the very bottom of that list. Paxton Lynch, Joe Flacco, Brandon Allen, Tim Tebow, Brock Osweiler, all were averaging more points per game in the start of their Broncos eras, so to speak, than Russell Wilson is right now.
Are you telling me you said Tim Tebow and Paxton Lynch are averaging more points than Russell Wilson? No,
yes.
I can't believe it.
Paxton Lynch in his first 4 starts as a Bronco averaged more points than Russell Wilson is averaging right now.
How sick is that?
It's awful. Awful. And so, I think that what that comes down to is both, right? Hackett and Russell are to blame here, but it's on Hackett to make the change. It's on Hackett to be the adult, so to speak, and say this isn't working. And you're right. If he doesn't make the change, he might be gone after the year. Brandon, if they lay an egg against the Jets and then lay an egg in London against the Jags, he might be gone 8 games into his NFL tenure as a head coach.
And nobody would be mad. Nobody would be, look, the Jets are playing good football on defense. Okay, They have a good defense. Okay, the Jags are playing decent football as well, right? So I'm not even sitting here saying, okay, usually you look at the schedule, you see the Jets and the Jags, you say, okay, these should be wins. This year, it's not. It's not guaranteed. The Jets went into Lambeau Field and put it on the Packers, and I was shocked. I was shocked. The Jets may be decent, right? They might be decent. Now we got to see as the season goes on, but Hackett better, he better get some sense of urgency about his job. Just because it's your first year, you think you have some guaranteed money. Usually, coaches' contracts are guaranteed. They don't care. They will still fire you.
No, not when you're talking about guys who have billions of dollars in the bank in the Walton Penner ownership group. They will gladly write a couple $1 million check for Nathaniel Hackett to go away if this continues. Brandon, the thing that concerns me is, even going back to the Raiders game. The Raiders game, offensively, they did some good things. I saw some hope, right? I felt like, okay, there was at least progress despite a loss, and maybe the offense found something. I have no hope right now that they can get this turned around. I have seen nothing that has made me believe that this is going to get better. They had 11 days between Thursday Night Football against the Colts and Monday Night Football against the LA Chargers. They had 11 days to get the offense ready to go up against the Chargers defense, which is not good. They were bottom 10 in the league in yards per game. They were bottom 5 in the league in yards per play and bottom 3 in terms of scoring through 5 weeks in the NFL. And yet the Broncos still managed just 16 points last night. They had their worst offensive outing of the season, 285 yards. I'm looking for a ray of sunshine here, and I see nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and supposedly for this revamped Chargers defense, they were supposed to be, one of the best in the league. It's still not that. Okay, do they have guys? Absolutely, but it's still not, what we would have thought. Looking at the paper coming into the season, there's no reason the Broncos shouldn't have, I'm not sure whatever adjustment. First of all, whatever adjustment the Chargers made in the second half, shout out to them. Yeah. Kudos to them on defense because they made a great adjustment and then they shut the Broncos down completely in the second half. Shut them down. There's no way. I don't even remember the last time a quarterback had 15 yards in the second half. It's 15 yards passing? No way.
after he had 173 in the first half. You know? I mean, so to me, that goes back to the play calling and not putting your guy in the best position. And I thought it was interesting. So last night there was obviously a couple big sacks, including one late in the game. And Shannon Sharp got on Twitter and said that's on Russ for not moving the offensive line around when the Chargers were clearly bringing a blitz off to the left side. I mean, I'm not going to go against Shannon and against what he's saying. He's forgotten more football than I will ever know, probably. But to me, it's still on the play calling and not putting your guys in proper positions to win games. When you go run, incompletion, run, incompletion, run, incompletion. That was basically their last 3 drives of the game. I'm not seeing anything that gives me hope for this offense getting this thing turned around.
Nothing, and like you said, Shannon is right. The quarterback has the option to change the protection. Once he sees the blitz, I mean, how savvy is Russell? I mean, he's no Peyton Manning, but at the same time, he still had a long career. He's been to Pro Bowl, so I'm sure that he knows, how to change protection or when there's a blitz coming or yada yada yada. I'm sure they give him that type of freedom, but maybe in Seattle, maybe he didn't necessarily have to. A lot of the play calling, I mean. There's a reason that Geno Smith is flourishing right now.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Let's
Remember
not forget
you said
that.
this a couple weeks ago. Was Russell system quarterback?
Let's not forget. There's a reason that Geno is flourishing. Geno is considered a backup by everybody in the league.
Yeah.
Right now, he's like I said, I have him on my other fantasy team. Okay, he's doing well for me. Okay, and it's shocking. He's doing well for me. So I think that's something to think about.
Yeah, I think it's very, very concerning where this offense is, and I don't know that it's going to get better because if they couldn't get it right in 11 days between the Colts and the Chargers, I don't know how they get it right before Sunday's game against the Jets, and then you fly into London, and it sets up for what could be some really, really ugly football, and you basically have to rely on your defense in order to win you games moving forward. And it was weird at the end of that game. We were sitting here talking in the office. We were watching it. We were like, well, I feel better about the Broncos defense winning them this game and scoring points in overtime than I do about the Broncos offense, which is a really, really sad state for where we are right now. When we come back, one Broncos starter was non-existent last night, and it wasn't due to injury. So what is Melvin Gordon's future with this team? We will discuss that and much more and hand out some grades in our report card segment. Next, right here on Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Welcome back to Inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. And Brandon, there was something that happened last night during the course of that game that left me scratching my head wondering what is going to happen here in the next couple of weeks. And I'm talking about Melvin Gordon, and you mentioned it in our first segment. There were a couple camera shots of Melvin Gordon on the sideline last night, clearly frustrated that he wasn't in the game. He played just 9 offensive snaps, as 16% of the Broncos' offensive snaps. He had 3 attempts for 8 yards. He was, after the game, meeting with a reporter, clearly upset. You could just tell he was trying to say all the right things, but he was visibly frustrated with what has gone on. And Brandon, it left me wondering, what is Melvin Gordon's future with the Broncos? Because they are clearly sending a message to him that even without Javonte Williams, they would prefer Latavius Murray and Mike Boone in the backfield. And I can't help but wonder what that means for Melvin Gordon's future.
Yeah, well, it looks like all of them grace. Melvin Gordon came in a couple years ago, played well last year, but the fumbles are too much. The fumbles are too much. They would rather have somebody on the field than put their team in jeopardy of, having a turnover, having a bad play because of his ball security issues. So at the end of the day, Melvin can have nobody to blame but himself. But, last week, he did pretty decent. I know he dropped the ball again against Indianapolis. But they brought Latavius in, and obviously I think it's 2 parts to that. Melvin has fallen from grace. They don't trust him, but also they want to see what Latavius can do. Latavius Murray has been a good back in this league for a very long time. Strong runner. He'll get yards after contact. He's what you're looking for. So I think they just put Melvin on notice, and you could tell by his face last night that they didn't tell him anything during the week.
Yeah.
And that's how coaches do. Coaches will act like it's all good during the week. I'm pretty sure he started. He went with the ones all week long, right? And then all of a sudden, and during the game, they say, we're going to give Latavius a little more carries than we give you.
What's that like? Because Latavius, he had 15 carries last night for 66 yards. And what's that like as a player? I don't know if you've ever been in that spot to where you anticipate going into the game, okay, hey, I'm going to have my role. I'm going to get my touches. And then obviously you're on the defensive side of the ball, so we're not talking about touches, but snaps. And then you feel like the rug has just been yanked out from underneath you. And I think you're spot on. That's what it felt like for Melvin Gordon last night, certainly watching him and his demeanor. And then the other part of that is you mentioned trust. I don't know how he gains it back for this coaching staff, because the only way to do that in my mind
and it's crazy because I say, go into the coach's office, speak to him, but at the end of the day, a lot of times, my coaches will sit in your face and tell you one thing, but behind closed doors, they say another thing, right? So it's tough. But the only thing he can do is not fumble. But like you said, are they going to give him the opportunity to not fumble? And that's the thing about it, right? They trust Mike Boone. He's good in the pass game. They like the way he runs. He's a quick back as well. He's made to the NFL for a reason, obviously. They trust everybody over Melvin, because it seems like every time he gets the ball, you're holding your breath. You're holding your breath. Like, please don't drop this ball. Please don't fumble. Please hold on to the football. So how he gains the trust back, I have no idea. Somebody might have to get hurt again, for them to say, you know what, Melvin, we're going to give you another opportunity.
Right. It's not that we trust you. It's just that you're our last option and that we have no other healthy bodies here. I'll be interested to see how this plays out, B-March, because based on Melvin's body language yesterday and based on some of his post-game comments and how he handled that interview that I saw with one of the reporters from NFL Network, I could see this going south. I could see it becoming an issue. And I like Melvin. He's been on some of our shows. He's been a great guest. He's always been good in the locker room to deal with. But I just wonder where this goes and how it affects the rest of that locker room moving forward based on what we saw last night. Let's jump into our report card. Time for today's report card, brought to you by Colorado Lottery. Play CBS 4 Pick the Score for your chance to win $1,000 in scratch tickets. Enter at cbscolorado.com/contest. Professor Marshall, who are you handing a grade out to today?
Man, I'm giving a grade A to Coach Evero, the defensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos. He has held up his end of the bargain. When you go into a defensive meeting room right before the season, we have a goal board, right? And the goal board typically says, okay, one of the goals is to hold offense to 17 points or less. Typically, that's either tops in the league or it'll win you most games, okay? Uh-huh. They've held up their end of the bargain, whether it's 19, whether it's 15, or whether it's whatever that the other teams have scored, but the offense is averaging 15.2 points per game. So you're holding up your end of the bargain as a defense, but your offense is scoring less than 17. It's tough to win, but at the end of the day, all we can do is control what we can't control. So shout out to Coach E.
You want to know a crazy stat? I love stats, and I saw this one on Twitter last night. The Broncos defense is allowing 16.5 points per game. That's fourth best in the National Football League. If you go down even further, the top 8 defenses in the league in terms of points per game, you got the Bills, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Broncos, the Bucks, the Eagles, the Patriots, and the Giants. The Broncos are the only team that does not have a 500 record or better. So to your point, the defense is holding up its end of the bargain. And for most other teams in the NFL, that's good enough. But the offense has been so inept that it's not good enough for the Denver Broncos. And Brandon, again, I feel like we're kind of having the same conversation. But Melvin Gordon's frustrated. Jerry Jeudy looked like he was frustrated last night. That defense has to be super, super frustrated at this point, because that's 2 weeks in a row where they have played well enough to win and have come up on the short end of the stick.
I mean, you would think this is 2000, 2017 to
Yes,
2021.
that's what it feels like.
You know what I'm saying? We thought we was going to have a revamped offense, a new team, all this firepower. Everybody's talking about, oh, Broncos this, Broncos that. Oh, my God. You know, they might have been better off with Drew Lock, how it's
Yeah,
looking right now.
yeah.
You know,
No, it's crazy.
but I'm going to put the onus on Hackett to get it fixed.
Okay. All right. Offensively, I'm going to hand out a grade to rookie Greg Dulcich. I'm going to give him a B. I want to give him an A because, but they didn't win the game. So, but Greg Dulcich, NFL debut, comes in, has a touchdown reception in the first quarter in his home state of California. Awesome moment for him, just a couple minutes from where he went to school at UCLA. Really, really cool to see that happen. Hopefully a sign of things to come. And Brandon, we're sitting here talking about Melvin Gordon and his future with the Broncos. Albert Okwuegbunam, a healthy scratch yesterday.
Yeah,
that
looking ugly.
Ooh, that's looking really ugly. I mean, you're talking about a guy whose snaps were already being limited, and then he shows up as a healthy scratch in favor of Greg Dulcich. Yeah. That's another one that looks like another John Elway draft pick that may not pan out. Granted, he was kind of in the later rounds. He was on the third day, but that is a guy who has clearly fallen out of favor with that Broncos coaching staff, and I'll be interested to see kind of what happens there. When we come back, we will zoom around the league, tell you what we saw in Week 6 in the NFL, and we'll get you set for Week 7 as we have our Underdog Fantasy Draft. You're watching Upon Further Review of B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Travel consideration is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. Welcome back to Inside Upon Further Review with B. Marsh and Michael, presented by Underdog Fantasy. It is time now to zoom around the league. Zoom around the league brought to you by Zoom Care. Visit zoomcare.com to learn more about their Beyond Better urgent and primary healthcare clinics in Denver and in Boulder. B. Marsh, I'm going to start with this one. And I was watching the game that was on CBS on Sunday afternoon, the Bills and the Chiefs, and a couple things stood out to me. One, man, those teams are really good. Two, those teams are in such a different class than what we watch every Sunday when the Broncos take the field. It is not even funny.
It's not close at all.
No, I mean, my goodness. The Broncos look like a JV team compared to what we see from the Bills and the Chiefs on Sunday, and that might be being generous.
Yeah, they're definitely on varsity as far as the Bills and the Chiefs. Broncos are in a different class, not in a good way. Okay, they play those teams. It's not. We already know who's going to win the ball game.
Yeah.
The Bills are loaded. They're my Super Bowl pick from the AFC to go to the championship game. Von Miller. It seems like everywhere he goes, he makes an impact.
Yes.
Okay? He's doing a fantastic job over there. Josh Allen over there hurdling people. He's everything. He's the pass game, the run game. He's everything. For Buffalo over there. So those two teams, the Chiefs and the Bills, I wouldn't be surprised if you see them in AFC Championship game.
Look, if the football gods are looking out for the rest of us, you will see them in the AFC Championship game, or at least in the playoffs at some point, because a rematch of that game is certainly in order. And I just think it's so funny, Brandon. It just proves, to your point, like when you have a quarterback who is playing well, gosh, you can do so many things. You know what I mean? And so I thought that the Bills went into that game on Sunday. They really wanted to get a win. They wanted to make a statement, and I thought they did. And that's not to say that the Chiefs, certainly didn't roll over and let them have it, but I was really impressed by what Buffalo did. The other team that's kind of standing out on the other side in the NFC is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, man, Philly was definitely my sleeper pick coming to the season. Just the way they revamped their squad with A.J. Brown, Hassan Reddick, James Bradbury on defense. They revamped it, right? Jalen Hurts is his third season. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I think it's going to be, something special now. Obviously, it's you start off well, but you got to finish well. November and December is the real test as far as football goes. But right now, they look fantastic, man. They're a well-balanced team. Jalen Hurts, he's doing it all for them. He's throwing it, he's running it. Miles Sanders is doing great in the run game as well. That defense is playing well. Darius Slay looks like the best corner in the NFL right now.
Yes.
He looks like the best right now. Surtain is right there with him. Okay, but right now, Slay is playing on a different level.
Yeah, I know you're a big Surtain guy, but you're right. Slay is playing crazy, and I'm not going to overreact to a win against a Cooper Rush-led Cowboys team, but it's hard to ignore 6-0 at this point, especially when they're the only team that does not have a loss in the NFL. And that NFC East is proven to be actually really good with the Giants and the way that they're playing right now. And so you got the Giants doing their thing, and then their teammates at MetLife Stadium, so to speak, the New York Jets, obviously coming in here on Sunday to take on the Broncos, and the Jets go to Green Bay and beat the Packers. I don't know if that says more about the Jets or if it says more about the Packers. By the way, shout out to former Bronco Will Parks, who had a little scoop and score on the blocked punt return for a touchdown. But I think the Jets, Brandon, are a formidable opponent coming into Sunday night. And I think I'm not necessarily worried about their offense, but I think you could see another ugly, low-scoring affair. And I'm starting to wonder if this Broncos defense is going to have to score points by themselves in order for them to actually win games and take advantage of how well they've been playing on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the under in that game. Okay,
yeah.
Because it's not like Zach Wilson throws for a lot of yards. I want to say he had 118 yards last game. I mean, their offense is okay, but their defense is what's doing it for them right now. This energizing team, Sauce Gardner, they got a lot of guys, that are playing extremely well. CJ Mosley's still doing it and doing it well. So look, we're gonna see what happens. It's gonna be the battle of two inept offenses. So let's see what happens.
Who doesn't want to watch that? The battle of two inept offenses. Yay, football. Speaking of Sauce Gardner, how about the swag on Sauce Gardner putting on the cheese head, walking around Lambeau after that win on Sunday?
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I don't think I have either.
Yeah. Did he snatch off a fan? Like what?
Yeah, the disrespect was real in that one. Hey, speaking of taking the under, let's get into this week's Underdog Fantasy game. Underdog Fantasy, it is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Before we get into this week's game, big shout out to B. Marsh. 2 straight wins and a dominating performance, by the way. That win last week was questionable. No doubt about this one, 72.1 to 43.1. Whatever organizational meeting you guys had a couple weeks ago is really starting to pay dividends on the field.
Oh yeah, no, it was a serious one. We put some fire. We put the fire on some guys. Let them know that look, you could be gone. Okay, so they got it together. We decided that we're gonna do it for each other, man, and see what happens this week.
I'm going to have to try and bottle some of that up to get my team going after 2 straight losses. Let's get into Thursday Night Football. We've got the Saints and the Cardinals. B-Marsh, you're the winner, so you get to go first. Who do you like with your first overall pick?
Man, give me Kamara. Yeah. The do-it-all guy, man. Give me Alvin.
That one's too easy, right? I'm going to go Hop with pick number 2, and then I'm going to go Taysom Hill, right? We don't draft quarterbacks when we do this normally, but I feel like Hill could maybe get me some points through the air. Who knows what the Saints' game plan is going to be on a short week, and probably still no Jameis. So I'll go Hopkins and then Taysom Hill with 2 and 3.
Okay, yeah, it's not bad. I'll take Rondale Moore. Yeah. And I'll take Benjamin.
Okay. All right. The running backs there. I like that. I'm going to go Marquez Callaway. And then I'm going to go Robbie Anderson, the newest member of the Arizona Cardinals after he got traded from the Panthers this week. Hopefully, I don't know, short week, that's probably not a smart pick, given that they got to play on Thursday. But just go deep. How hard is that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Go deep. I'll run a post or whatever. And then I'll take Mark Ingram, my last pick.
Okay. All right. I like it. So you got Alvin, Rondale Moore, Benjamin, and Ingram. I've got Hopkins, Taysom Hill, Callaway, and Anderson for this week's Underdog Fantasy Draft coming up on Thursday Night Football. That is going to do it for this edition of Upon Further Review of B. Marsh and Michael, presented as always by Underdog Fantasy. B. Marsh, looking forward to having you in the studio next week. We will talk to you then. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store.